Hello everyone, and welcome. Yes, my name is Arrowfire, and welcome back to another episode of my Top 5. So today I am going to talk about my favourite G1 episodes, and this is going to be hopefully a popular episode. I think we've all got our favourites, but this is one I've wanted to do for a while. And actually for a while I wanted to do my top 5 of each season, but then I thought, well, I can't really do that for season 4 because there's only 3 episodes, and I'm not going to do it for season 3 now, am I? Come on, let's be honest. So I'm going to go through my top 5 G1 episodes, seasons 1 to 4, not including the movie of course, and any other specials that may or may not exist. It's just going to be the standard cartoon series that we got, and boy was this hard narrowing this down. There's going to be a lot of good episodes that I'm going to miss, which is a shame. There's going to be a ton of honourable mentions, and I'm sure everyone is going to have their own opinions. But let's get on and have a look at my top 5.
Top 5.
Number 5, Triple Takeover. Yeah, again, this is going to be quite a popular episode, I think, in that we see a lot of showcasing here. We get a lot of in-depth thought and discovery of the characters. Okay, yeah, the cartoon was there to sell the toys, but we get to see a bit of the ambitious nature of an Astrotrain and a Blitzwing that we don't really see before, and how they're going to vie for position, being coerced by Starscream. There's a lot to like about this series and how the ambition takes over. And even though you see a bit of a stupidity sense from the likes of Blitzwing and Astrotrain, who were never known for being the most viable contenders for leaders, that their ambition and what they were prepared to do to get there really overtook them and got the better of them, but in an admiring way. There's a lot to like about this episode. Number 4, War Dawn. Now, again, this could be quite popular because this is really the most history we get in one episode, particularly in the cartoon's point. We don't really know where the Autobots and Decepticons went to war from and how it kind of all started, so seeing this really gave us the most insight at this point. We just assumed there would be an ongoing war, but we don't see the birth of Optimus Prime, and in this episode we do, and how he is a young, inspiring and hopeful Orion Pax working in a garage as a mechanic with his girlfriend, with his best friend, and it's all very nice and straightforward until Megatron comes along and has a bit of a go. And we do see just really the birth of it all. This is how far back we're going, and how we see a damaged Orion Pax ultimately rebuilt by a very young Alpha Trion, who makes, in turn, Optimus Prime. And this was skirted around. There is a couple of other passages of how only Optimus's creator would know certain things, and really it's clarified for us in this point that we see that Alpha Trion is Optimus's creator, although we probably knew by this point. And how when Optimus and Megatron square up for the first time, that this was Megatron's match, that before Megatron and Decepticons were just running roughshod until someone of an equal size and stature was built to go one-on-one against it. We also see the birth of Elita 1 in this episode, and how she starts off as Ariel. So there's a lot of historical meaning from this one episode, and how time travelling plays an effect as well, which is a nice play where you start getting into the chicken and egg. How could the aerial bots have travelled back in time? Does that mean there was a time, at least in the very first instance, that Optimus Prime doesn't exist? That being said, it's still a very good episode, very historic episode, and again, very popular with most Transformers fans. Number 3, The Call of the Primitives. And yep, this is about as much for Season 3 as you're getting out of me. Season 3, for those of you who do not know, is not exactly the best of the Transformers cartoon. A lot of animation studios change, and a lot of errors came with it. But again, as a showcase episode, we see a lot here. We see the Dinobots in probably their best outing in Season 3. They don't get a run out like this as much as they do in, say, Season 1 or Season 2. So this is the best showing we've seen of them for a while. We see a lot of the Predacons, which is of course why I like it. We see a bit of Predaking with a lovely style drawn of the animation studio, chosen for this one episode at the time. We also see the Terracons, Abominus, we have Skylynx, Trypticon, and a ton of other Transformers we've never seen before or since. So there's a lot to like here. And we witness how Unicron is created, how Primacron creates Unicron to be this entity, but now has a new entity taking his place and how it's going to havoc and just be a ball of energy, causing wrath and pain for the galaxy, really taking over in the predecessor's state, but under a stricter form of control. It is a really good episode. There's a lot to like about it, not just the animation style, but the ending is a bit weak. And I've said this before, that I feel that as good an episode as it is, for Grimlock to come along and just press a button and smash it all over at the end of it, which again, I know it's a primitive episode, so a primitive mind wins out, it is a bit of maybe a lackluster ending to all the fanfare that we see at the start of the episode. A good episode though it is. Number 2, The Key to Vector Sigma, Parts 1 and 2. Now this is, as I've said before, probably my first memory of the Transformers cartoon. I remember the opening scene of the Autobots being escorted with the humans going through a tunnel, and that could be one of my first memory of watching Transformers on screen. But as an episode, this is really good. How we see Alpha Trion being fused with Vector Sigma, effectively giving his life and his spark. We see the key to Vector Sigma and birth of new Transformers being constructed cold and given sparks, given life that we don't see at this point. Not only that, these are new Transformers. The Decepticons have cars for a change. The Autobots have jets for a change. They're a team of their own, and they turn into combiners. They form combiners in Menasor and Superion. This is quite a heavy deal. No wonder it's across 2 episodes. A very good episode, a good one to watch. You see a lot of detailing here, and how even though the Stunticons and the Decepticons seem to coexist more easily and quicker and a better integration, the Aerialbots and Autobots weren't as much, and there was fractures there between the factions. It's still a brilliant episode. It plays out really well to the ending. There's a lot to like it, and it sets a benchmark of this going forward, of how new Transformers are created and how there has to be a life bringer, like a Vector Sigma, giving life to these Transformers, and how it would set the tone for future episodes to come. Okay, honourable mentions, I've got to do some at least. What can I say? Cosmic Rust has always been a really good one of mine. Starscream's Brigade, Starscream's Ghost as well. Kind of anything with Starscream really is good fun to watch. Fight or Flee is a good episode. It has some good stuff to it. Desertion of the Dinobots has always been a particular favourite of mine. Again, one I had on VHS, and most people in the UK had on VHS. It's again a good feature-length episode. Heavy Metal War, that's one that I always particularly liked. It felt very final, and I think was really decreed to be the end of the first season, but it felt quite final in and of itself. And of course, The Rebirth. Now, The Rebirth itself is 3 episodes, long episodes, filling up a series and starting the Headmaster series beyond that. And as good as it was, and it was, it always felt a bit separate to me. It felt like it was detached, and it was going off in its own direction. It didn't really pick up post-war. There was a lot of characters who just seemingly didn't exist by this point, so it felt a bit detached. However good it was, however it set the tone for Headmasters and other races like the Nebulons, and it's a shame there wasn't really a proper ending for Galvatron the way The Rebirth ended. It is still a brilliant episode. And number 1, The Return of Optimus Prime. So, yeah, how could it not be? There's so much in this episode for a number of points. Now, really, this starts from, as the title suggests, The Return of Optimus Prime. Hasbro realised they'd done up, and they realised they killed off the biggest draw to the Transformers franchise, how their numbers were nosediving. They had to bring Optimus back. And what better way to do it? But this wasn't even really war with the Decepticons. This was new. This was the hate plague, the contagious infection that just made anyone rampage and violent carnage towards anyone else. So how could you go against this? How do you beat this foe with Megatron gone and anyone else? Galvatron is now somewhat in exile on Char, but then ultimately becomes crazed himself, more so than usual. There's a lot in this episode, and how we see a desperate Rodimus Prime, but in this episode actually Rodimus gets a lot of things right, and I don't think that gets picked up on enough. He knows to disconnect Metroplex, he knows to keep the humans safe, he knows he needs to revive Optimus and get people like Wreck-Gar involved, so he does a lot of the right steps here. But how this goes on and how the Autobots, or what's left of them, have to coat themselves with a protective metal so they don't get infected, and there's only room for one to do so. They have to go to Char to get it done, and that causes its own problems. And then you have a bit of an intercombiner fight between Defensor and Superion. There's a lot here. We get Quintessons involved. We go to other worlds. The fact this goes between galaxies, and we even go inside the Matrix, back to this entity at the very end of it, which I don't think we still know what this is. There's a lot of talk that this is an ancient Quintesson. This is not really said, but why would this be inside the Matrix? Very far back, that this hate plague has existed before, and how the Matrix is going to be the only way this stops. Again, it felt very final and ends in the best way possible, I think. For the entire Transformers series, you get a very humbled Galvatron at the end, shaking hands with Optimus Prime, saying, "At least for today, there will be no more war. There is something bigger." And how the episode finishes with the Matrix empties and how the Autobots drive off into the distance. This feels a very neat and tidy way of doing it, that this was the universe's destruction brought to by the end of the returning leader, the White Knight as it were. The Matrix spent, and it felt like a nice rounded way to cap off Transformers on the TV screen, at least at this point. And there we go, that is my top 5 Transformers G1 episodes. It wasn't easy to draw down those 5, it wasn't easy to make a list. But let me know your favourites in the comments below, and tell me your reasons as to why as well. What is so good about some of these episodes? There's a lot to choose from, and everyone's got their particular spotlight episodes, particularly the Gold Lagoon if you like Beachcomber, or ones like that where the likes of maybe Sea Spray get their own little spotlight episode as well for characters that you particularly like. But that is just my top 5. I'd love to know yours. But thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you on the next one.